So we got a question from Luke, who is a thin grappler, and he's looking to put on some size and some strength while maintaining his jiu-jitsu training. He's currently about 138 and 6 foot tall. To give you contrast, I'm 6 foot tall, about 210, 215. And he's looking to gain some size. Now, he has a couple questions. First one is simply, do you have any basic recommendations on how to gain some strength, some size, and some weight? And then he's asking about doing jiu-jitsu and weight training at the same time. If jiu-jitsu will hurt his strength training, and is it possible to do them both on the same day? So, brother, thank you for the question. And Luke, I'm gonna share from two experiences. One is gonna be my own experience when I worked my way up, all the way up to about 255, right? So much heavier than I am now. And then I'm also gonna share from one of my students who I believe he was around the same weight when he first started, about in the 130 range, and he's gained about 20, 25 pounds since then. So in my experience, you may know this, I started off as a chubby high schooler who lost a bunch of weight in wrestling. And then at the end of high school, I was about 190 and I was kind of thin. I didn't have like a really bulky composition or anything. And I wanted to get bigger. And so I started to work my way up until about 2008. I was in the middle of doing like powerlifting and strongman stuff on the weekends. And I was eating like crazy and I got up to 255, my zenith of weight. And I was big. It was a little too heavy for what I need to do in jiu-jitsu, because when I train in jiu-jitsu, I really like to move, and it was really hard to move when I was that heavy. But when I was working my way up, the first thing was obviously lifting weights. We'll talk about that in a second, but I was eating like crazy. I mean, I would eat so much food that when I would tell people how much food I was eating, they would look at me and think, oh my God, or they would say rather, are you sick? Are you okay? Like, that's a lot of food. And, I kind of relished in it a little bit because it was kind of like, I don't know, it seems like a manly thing to do, eat a lot of food, just be able to eat a bunch of stuff and keep going. But I was eating so much food because every week I would add a little bit extra. I would add an extra cup of rice, an extra egg for breakfast, a little bit more steak at dinner. I would just, every week I would add a little bit more. And as long as the weight was going up, I was like, I'm just going to keep this going. Now, I didn't eat a lot of junk food. I just kept it to be good food, but just ate a lot of it. And so the first thing I would say with you is that you have to eat like a big guy if you want to be a bigger guy. And I say this because you say you're 138 right now, and most smaller guys, I know they have a couple things working against them. One is sometimes they have a really fast metabolism. Sometimes they have an overactive thyroid. You may get that checked. The other thing is that a lot of guys, smaller guys, they don't eat as much as they think they do. Now, you said you ate about 2,800 calories is what you said in your message. But, and I just say this from experience, you may be right on the money with your calorie intake. Every small guy that I've ever worked with who I've helped gain some weight, when they bring me their food journal for a week, it's always like one day maybe is big with food, the rest of the week's like, they don't eat anything. They eat like a small amount of food the rest of the week because that's their normal appetite. And so the first thing that you've got to do is you've got to start eating like it's your job, and you've got to start eating like a big guy. It's as simple as that. You've got to try to every week add a little bit more food to the mix. Now, there are people out there that could, like coaches that could work with you to really dial in your macros. But in the beginning, if you're a really thin guy, just start by eating more food and lots of good food. I'm not talking about junk food. I'm talking about, like lots of good protein sources, good carbohydrates, veggies, and some good fats in there. Now, the second thing or experience would be from one of my students who came into the gym about 130s, I believe. And when he first came in, he was a thin gamer nerd. I don't mean gamer nerd in any negative sense. I'm a geek myself, but just kind of give you an idea of who he is. He's been sitting on the couch playing video games, and he's thin. Comes into the gym, starts doing jiu-jitsu, likes it, and he kind of buddies up with one of the other guys in the gym. By the way, his name is Scroggs. That's the nickname we have for him. He buddies up with one of our other guys, Nate. And Nate's big meathead, about 210, and he's like all about weightlifting. And so Scroggs and Nate kind of bond with each other. They're like buddies. And so Scroggs started to go to the gym with Nate at like 5, 6 in the morning. He'd go lift weights. And when Scroggs would lift weights, and when he does lift weights, he doesn't do it like, you ever go to the gym where like someone's running on the treadmill and they look like they're running a prison sentence or something. They're just like, oh my God, 15 more minutes. I just want to be done with this already. Scroggs doesn't do that, right? Like when he goes to the gym, he's not just, I want to get bigger, so I'll lift the weights. He like gets in there and he's like, yeah, let's do it. Let's do some bench press or let's do some squats. He's ready to get after it. He's adopted the mindset of being a meathead. He freaking loves lifting. And so that's a big thing. Just like you need to eat like a big guy, you got to lift like a big guy. And again, big meals and big weight, that's all relative to you, but you got to be a bigger person. You got to adopt the habits of being a bigger person in order to get bigger. It's as simple as that. That's a place to start. Now, again, there's lots of programs out there that you can get into, but get a good strength training program. You can do a 3 or 4 day a week split and then start with that and really just work on being bigger and stronger and all that kind of stuff. Now, if you're doing all that, When it comes to like, is jiu-jitsu going to hurt your training? Can you do them on the same day? A couple tips I would share just from my own personal experience. I don't like to do jiu-jitsu and weight training really close together. If you're a novice lifter and maybe a novice jiu-jitsu practitioner, so you're new at both, that's going to be really taxing to your body. If possible, split those up on like days. So maybe, jiu-jitsu on one day, lifting on one day, jiu-jitsu on one day, lifting on one day, and give yourself lots of time to rest and recover. Because again, lifting is a stimulus, jiu-jitsu is a stimulus. You need time to recover from those. Rest is just as important as the actual stimulus itself, because you could work your body into the ground, but if you don't get enough sleep, if you don't get enough time to rest, it's just not gonna help. Like an old bodybuilder back in the day used to tell me, he's like, you don't grow in the gym, you don't grow in the weight room, you grow in the bedroom and the kitchen by the way that you sleep, how much rest you get, and how much you eat. So really be careful about that. Now, if you want to lift and do jiu-jitsu on the same day, if you have to, try to spread them out by several hours so you have time to rest in between and eat more food in between. And then if you absolutely have to do them really close together, try to lift first, because every time I do jiu-jitsu first and then lift, I always, like, my muscles are loose, my body's just tired. So when I get into the weight room, I really can't push the weight that I normally do, and I don't get a very good workout. I would be better suited just to wait and just do it another time. So that's the basic idea for you, brothers. Start with just eating big and lifting big. Eat a plate of food, go to the gym and lift weights. Give yourself lots of time to rest, and then when it comes to jiu-jitsu, squeeze it in there, and try to separate the training sessions. And the last thing, I'll just throw this in there: if you start doing jiu-jitsu more and you notice that it's starting to make you lose weight and you feel like you're losing strength in the gym, back off of it a little bit while you're gaining that weight. Again, eventually, as you get bigger and bigger and you hold that weight for a while, it'll like stick. But in the process of becoming bigger, that has to be the focus for a bit. So anyway, Luke, I hope this helps, brother. Thank you so much for the question.